Today, we're diving into a really old story, a parable from ancient Mesopotamia that gets at a pretty unsettling truth about survival. And that truth is this: sometimes, the only way to fight a monster is with an even scarier monster.
This quote? It's pretty much the key to our whole story. It comes from The Parable of the Two Winds, and it just perfectly captures this lesson in, well, brutal pragmatism. The idea is you don't fight darkness with light. You fight it with a bigger, more terrifying darkness.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in the ancient city of Nineveh, and we meet this guy, a weaver named Adad, who's just had a newborn son. But all that joy is kinda clouded by this chilling fear that's stalking the city streets at night, a silent, creeping dread. And this is what everyone's afraid of, the demon Lamashtu. Now, in Mesopotamian belief, she was the absolute worst, a truly malevolent spirit whose whole thing was preying on newborns. Her evil wasn't random, it was targeted, it was personal, and it could get past any lock on your door.
So how does Adad plan to protect his kid from this thing? Not with prayers to some benevolent god. Nope. Instead, he goes for something, well, pretty shocking. He gets a bronze amulet of another demon, a really grotesque figure with a snarling face and all these monstrous features. And this is where things get really interesting.
So to really get at Adad's choice, you have to understand the two big supernatural forces at play here. It's really a story of two terrible winds, and they represent two very, very different kinds of evil. One is Lamashtu, the predator we just met, and the other is the demon on that amulet. Meet Pazuzu. In their mythology, he was basically the personification of the scorching southwest wind. And we're not talking about a nice breeze here. This was the kind of wind that brought drought, famine, and plague. He was essentially a natural disaster in demon form, a blight on the whole land. Okay, this right here breaks down the whole dynamic perfectly. See, Lamashtu is a focused predator. Her evil is personal. Pazuzu, on the other hand, he's like an indiscriminate force of nature. His destruction is massive, sure, but it's not malicious in the same way. So if you're trying to protect one specific child from one specific threat, Lamashtu is the immediate greater evil. And that makes Pazuzu, believe it or not, the lesser of two evils. And, this is exactly the reaction you'd expect, right? Adad's neighbor sees this Pazuzu amulet and is absolutely horrified. From his point of view, Adad isn't warding off evil. He's literally inviting a different, maybe even worse kind of evil right into his home. He's basically saying what we're all thinking. So let's get to the heart of it. Why would you do this? Why would this even work? Well, the answer is actually in the design of Pazuzu himself. Every single one of his monstrous features had a specific purpose. There was a logic to it. A logic designed for a world where, yeah, sometimes you need a monster to fight other monsters. Let's just pause on that for a second. Why invite a demon in? Because you have to remember, in the ancient Mesopotamian worldview, power wasn't a simple good versus evil thing. It was just power. And a really powerful, really terrifying force could be pointed in a direction that helps you, even if that force is inherently destructive. This slide just illustrates the point brilliantly. Pazuzu's body is a supernatural weapon. That snarling lion face, it wasn't for scaring humans, it was for scaring other spirits. The talons, the scorpion's tail, they all signal that this creature is at the absolute top of the demonic food chain. Even his raised hand is this universal sign for back off. Don't even think about it. And that's the absolute crucial point. Pazuzu's terrifying image was a form of spiritual intimidation. He was basically a cosmic guard dog, and his ferocious look was a clear message to any other malevolent spirit. Do not come near this place, because something way fiercer than you lives here. All right, let's get back to the story. We're at the climax of the parable now. The sun goes down, the night gets quiet, and Adad's wild gamble is about to be put to the ultimate test. So here it is, the confrontation. Lamashtu, the stealer of breath, creeps up to Adad's home, but just as she gets to the threshold, she comes face to face with the snarling image of Pazuzu. And in that silent, supernatural standoff, she recognizes a predator that is way, way more ferocious than she is, and she bolts. She just flees back into the night. The lesser evil has just scared off the greater. The next morning, Adad's son is safe and sound, and Adad delivers the moral of the story with this incredibly powerful line. He didn't embrace the gale, that destructive wind of Pazuzu, because he liked it. He did it out of pure necessity. It was the only thing strong enough to keep the wolf, Lamashtu, away from his door. So what's the ultimate takeaway here?
Well, the parable teaches a pretty complex lesson, that real wisdom isn't always about finding some perfect benevolent savior. Sometimes it's about understanding that power is just a force, and that survival can mean having the guts to harness a dangerous power for your own protection.
Now, here's what's so wild. This idea of a grim guardian is so potent that Pazuzu's story didn't just end back in Mesopotamia. His legacy has actually lasted for thousands of years, and it's transformed in some really fascinating ways.
I mean, just trace this incredible journey. For centuries, Pazuzu was this household protector you'd find on little bronze amulets. Then, bam, 1971, he gets totally recast as the ultimate evil in the novel The Exorcist. And of course, the 1973 movie just seared his image into modern culture forever. Now he's everywhere, from serious horror to actual parodies, which just shows you how iconic he's become.
Ultimately, Pazuzu's journey from protector to pop culture villain tells us something really deep about ourselves. We're just endlessly fascinated by huge, uncontrollable forces, and we're always looking for ways to confront our fears, even if that means using a shadow to fight the darkness.
And that leaves us with one last thought. The parable of Pazuzu isn't just some ancient myth. It's really an allegory for a strategy we still use all the time. It kind of forces us to ask ourselves, what are the lesser evils we embrace, or the fiercer parts of ourselves that we unleash to protect us from a much greater threat? What shadows do we use to fight our own darkness?